Pride Month, when the world's LGBTQ communities come together and celebrate the freedom to be themselves. Pride gatherings are rooted in the artist history of minority groups who have struggled for decades to overcome prejudice and be accepted for who they are. Today we are joined by our dear friend Tishya Bedi from Daya Houston. Daya is a Houston-based nonprofit whose mission is to empower South Asian survivors of sexual and domestic violence through culturally specific services. So let's kick off Pride Month together now.
Hi.
Welcome, Tishya. So nice to have you back.
Thank you. It's always so lovely to be here in this space with y'all. I feel like we just have so many wonderful conversations.
Yes.
And just, Daya really appreciates having this platform to spread education to people, throughout Houston.
Yeah.
And happy Pride Month, everyone. I know it's an exciting month.
Yeah.
Full of color and love.
Yeah, I've been actually seeing a lot of the colorful merchandise. I've seen it in Target. I think a couple of other stores, so it's becoming more mainstream.
Yeah. I feel like it's such a great effort by, the whole community to actually get the messaging out there that we support and love everyone the way that they are, and they're free to be who they are.
Yes, exactly. So what is Pride Month and why is it celebrated in June?
Oh, so this is it's such a rich historical question, right? Because Pride Month actually started a year after the 1969 Stonewall riots.
Okay.
So Pride Month actually began in 1970. Okay. But in 1969 in New York, there were a quaint few bars where the LGBTQ community could come in and gather and be themselves, because at that point the government and society was very homophobic, and it was illegal to be who you were and to love who you wanted to love. So, for the longest time, marriage wasn't legalized, but even back then, being with somebody was, illegal. And so in 1969, a lot of riots began after the police raided the Stonewall Inn, which was a very predominant and historical gay bar where for years and decades people were gathering and supporting each other through numerous issues. So for 6 days there was a very large and violent sort of riot. And so then once, they overcame all of that and people were free to be who they wanted to be after those riots, in 1970, people wanted to start celebrating the major efforts of people in 1969. So beginning 1970 in June, every year we've celebrated Pride Month to sort of honor those who really fought for the rights of the LGBTQ community.
That's amazing. I had no idea that it's been there for that long. I guess because we've been hearing about it more recently. Right. Yeah.
And so it's such a it's a fun fact that I like to tell people, because I think I feel the same way, where I didn't even know about Pride Month until I was in college, and then I was really confused. I was like, how has this been going on for so long, and I'm just finding out about it? And I think that's also, we have to shout out the LGBTQ community for advocating every single year to have a seat at the table, to make themselves known in the community, to spread awareness, and to give support to those who are maybe freshly, coming out and recognizing who they are.
Yes, that's amazing. So how did Pride really start?
So this is another really fun thing that I like to talk about, and I learned about this in college. So Pride actually began with the civil rights movement. So folks were fighting for freedom to be, a colored person in the United States. And along with that, the protesters were also fighting for equality of sexes, equality of, different colored people, equality for people of different sexual orientations and gender identities. So really the tactics that were used in 1969, the types of protesting, silent protesting, gathering, and walking the streets, making themselves known, actually began because of the way that the civil rights movements happened, and gathering in the same way and making sure that it was as least violent as it could be because of how the civil rights, leaders led their protests as well. So that's why I feel like there's so many intersections in just the way that us, as minorities gained freedom, also how like the LGBTQ community also gained freedom.
That is very interesting. So who can celebrate or participate in celebrating Pride Month?
Everyone. I think there are a lot of people who believe that you have to be in the queer community to celebrate Pride Month, but really it's just us everyone recognizing that these are very valuable, community members in our society, and they might be your neighbor, they might be your kids, they might be anyone that you know. And us celebrating and participating in any of the activities that are happening in Pride Month really shows that we care and that we support no matter what, we love no matter what, and that there is, a community out there that will accept you no matter what.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what is the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity?
That's a very common question that we get a lot, and there's just an easy way to think about it. Sexual orientation is who you like, and gender identity is who you are. So just like we all have cultural identities, right? Like, I'm Tishya Bedi, I'm 26, I'm a straight South Asian woman. We all have that identity. And so just like that, gender identity is I identify as, a woman or a man or trans or, some people are non-binary where they don't even, want to conform to any of the gender roles that society has. And then sexual orientation is like who you like, sometimes you might like, you might be lesbian, you might be gay, and sometimes you might not even like anyone, you could be asexual, you might not want to be intimate in any way with anyone. And so there are a lot of sexual orientations, and I really highly encourage people to read up on it because it's good to know about and to have that knowledge just in case somebody comes to you and they say, like, this is who I am. And one thing to note is these, like, gender identity and sexual orientation are both very fluid. So it doesn't mean that you were born a certain way. You can go through life and have experiences where you really truly figure out who you are. And it's very fluid where maybe, for a couple years you thought you may be into men, but then in a couple years later you find out that you're not. And that's why we need to create that space for people to be able to explore and see who they really are and be able to love and be themselves in this very close-knit community that we have in Houston.
And that's amazing, right? Because I have never, it's always been subconscious that I'm South Asian and I'm straight, but like saying out loud when you said that about yourself, it's just something different. Like when you identify yourself or you say that, like we've never had to do it. I mean, growing up or even growing up in India and then moving here, I guess that was never a thought.
It's honestly crazy. There's this, iceberg image that we often use, which is like, here you are, like above the water is who you present as. as, right? That's what society sees you as. So if I see you, I'm like, yes, South Asian woman who, you know, has kids, so I'm assuming that you have a husband, like all these things. Right? But then you go under the water and there's this huge chunk of the iceberg that isn't visible to the eye, and that's when you come forward and say, hey, this is my cultural identity, this is my gender identity, this is it's as little things like as I think us South Asians are very touchy-feely, right? We love hugging, we love gathering. Even that is like a cultural identity, is like being touchy. Because my white best friend is not at all. I'm always like, give me a hug, and she's like, get away from me. And so, I think it's as you mentioned, like, I don't think anybody ever thinks about having to say it.
Yeah, but then, like, I have young kids, and then I guess for them growing up in this culture, it's going to be different. So, like you said, knowledge for me as a parent is important, so I can understand what the kids are going through, right? Yeah, so...
I mean, in class, they probably, I don't know in Texas if that's even legal yet.
I got a thing, right, that where they had their sexual education now in 7th grade.
Wow, okay.
Yes, so because I had the letter I had to sign from
that's
the health
fantastic.
teacher. Yeah, but I don't know I need to find out what did they go through. I'm sure they did not go through this.
In Texas, it's a little difficult because our lawmakers, unfortunately, have made so many directly affect like minority groups such as like abortion, sexual health care, and even for the LGBTQ community, just making things more difficult, unfortunately. And so in schools, I don't know yet if they're discussing that. And also,
but see, again, I never had to tell him, okay, what gay means, or because I have shied away from that conversation. But but it was just an uncomfortable kind of situation to talk about, but it's there everywhere now, so you can't really hide from it. If you don't talk to them, they are going to learn from somewhere.
That's
so I
true.
feel like as a parent, if you want to have that conversation and be the gatekeeper for it, you go ahead and have it, because they are definitely learning it.
Absolutely. And I think it's like little efforts like being able to share your pronouns, and I know that's been a very controversial topic in school systems. It's like, why are we allowing young kids to share what their pronouns are? But it's also something that we're seeing more and more in schools, is that teachers, it might not be allowed in the district, right, but teachers are allowing on their name tags for kids to be able to write their pronouns. And I think that's also a great gateway into a conversation with your kids, is like, oh, do you see somebody who might look a certain way but identify as a different, identify differently? And if so, this is what it is and what it means, because it's a harsh fact that the LGBTQ community is more prone to bullying, a higher number of suicides, a higher number of anxiety and depression within the group. And so I think it's our responsibility as community members to create a safe space. And especially for younger kids, it's as easy as liking a really rude joke on Instagram, because everyone can see what you're liking. And maybe if I'm in the closet and I see my best friend has liked this really horrible joke, I might not feel comfortable telling them who I am. And so it's highly encouraged that we have these conversations and just keep doors as open as possible. But also, you guys are parents, you guys know best as to how to approach conversations and at what age. We're not saying that you should talk to your toddler about something, but when you feel like it's right to do, it's probably right to do,
How do different intersectionalities affect LGBTQ folks?
So if anybody doesn't know intersectionality, what it means, basically it is your different identities. So it might be your socioeconomic status, the religion that you practice, the culture that you're from, are you able-bodied or disabled? All these different identities that you have, and they come in intersections and make up who you are. So once again, I am a younger South Asian straight woman who has a college education. So my intersectionality might fall here compared to somebody maybe back home in India who is younger South Asian straight woman but hasn't had an education or not been allowed to.
Yeah.
So on the scale of who's, it sounds horrible, who will be better off in life, it's
the one
you
who's
know,
educated.
exactly, and how you can measure that. And so for the LGBTQ community, it's a common theme that, you know, like more white Caucasian families are more accepting of their children or community members who are queer, but think about it for South Asian people or the Black community or Latina community, you know, it's very, all those intersectionalities really place you where are they going to be accepted or not? And so if you're a disabled queer person who's in the Black community, you can already imagine how many more issues they might face with their identities as somebody who isn't that, you know?
Yeah.
And so intersectionalities often affect the LGBTQ community a lot more than we think that it does. They're fighting internal battles as well as external battles. And so when we come across somebody, we never know their story, right?
Yeah.
They might be out and proud, but we never know what their exact identities are that made them and that helped them be who they are today. Yeah.
That's interesting. This is such an eye-opening conversation because, I mean, we live in our bubble, so don't even realize, you know, what people have to go through and the different things that impact them, right?
Yeah.
So, why is it important to encourage everyone to support or participate in Pride Month, even if they are not a part of the LGBTQ community?
Yeah, we've touched on this, and it's showing up, as simple as showing up, you know. You guys with kids, like, how excited do your kids get when you show up to their, like, dance recital or piano recital, just showing up? There's viral videos out where, you know, parents joked around with their children that, hey, I won't be able to come to your dance recital today, but when, you know, they're videoing them and the kid finally sees the parents and they become so happy and more confident. That's the same way, like, us showing up for this community and showing them that we love them and care for them and will be there for them. It gives them more confidence and more ability to be who they are and lead by example to other people, because, you know, a lot of the older queer community, they're mentors for the younger ones. So if we show the older community love, they're going to be able to better educate the younger community, which overall just creates a safer environment for everyone, a more loving environment, a more healthy, mentally healthy environment, and physically as well, because a lot of sexual education for the LGBTQ community is given by the community themselves. And so if we show up and we, you know, give resources out as well, like Daya, you know, we show up to events and we say that we serve everyone no matter what. So if somebody in that community, a South Asian, you know, LGBTQ person is experiencing some sort of violence, they might not have to second guess coming to us because they know we show up and we have vocally said we take care of, you know, we will take care of them. And so, it's about showing up and
just being there. No, let them know that they're like it's an inclusive environment, right? So, and I love that beautiful example about the recital. That is so true. It's as simple as that. You know, just I guess being there.
Exactly.
How can we encourage the LGBTQ youth?
So I think every single one of my answers I think is going to start off with like showing love. I think youth LGBTQ communities, they're the most vulnerable because they're at this age where they're trying to navigate all these like newfound experiences that they're having. So if they're in school, like high school, they're trying to navigate these hormonal changes, first of all, that they're going through. Then the societal stuff that's happening around them, like, oh, who likes who, who's dating who, the stress of school, family members, everything, right? And so showing them love, and the biggest component also is education, that if you haven't told somebody what their options are, and I'm saying options, but who they could be, they might not be able to pinpoint it themselves, right, initially. And it takes a lot of trial and for us to educate the communities on numerous different topics. So having continued conversations with the youth in our community, that this is this could be somebody around you, this could be you, this could be your brother, your sister, your family members, and continuing to educate them. And by education, showing them compassion and support and love, because when you educate somebody on something, 1 out of 10 might feel like they identify with what you just educated them on. And really just I always share this story, about youth. Last year we had an event, and we had a lot of South Asian parents join in on this event who have kids that are in the LGBTQ community. And I still, it made me cry when this rainbow mom mentioned, we asked her, like, how did you support your child through this transition, through this like really, really like rocky journey that most have to go through. And she said, when my child was born, I promised and I took an oath to love them no matter what. So when my child is strong enough to come forward to me and tell me who they are, my feelings should not matter. It's that still that same child, that same oath that I took. They might just identify differently.
Oh my God. I'll cry or something. I might start crying. Because as a parent, you feel that, right? And for her to be so strong and support her child, that's just amazing.
And so that's the number one way to encourage is to be there.
Yes. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back right after our break. Welcome back to Chai Time on 99.5 FM. We are in conversation with Tishya about Pride Month. So Pride Month has taken on a grander form now. What purpose does Pride Month have in today's society?
Yeah, I am so happy to see how large the movement has gotten, from a parade that might have had 100, 200 people, now having hundreds of thousands of people gathering in downtown Houston, where the whole community is showing up. Business owners are coming. Parents are bringing their kids to show them that these are very valued community members of ours, and us showing up and showing that we're there, and that no matter what people say, no matter what these misconceptions are, what the government is saying, that like we care. Houston cares, the community cares. So as it's gotten bigger, I think just like all of us, we've become more educated on it, right? When as I mentioned earlier, when I wasn't, in high school, I didn't really know about the Pride Parade. And when I came to Houston, because it was so big here already, I learned about it, and I got to know what the history was. And now that just the presence of the parade itself is, I think, one of the biggest form of solidarity to the community. And the purpose it serves every year is that the queer community is saying, we are here, we are going to be ourselves, we're going to be loud and proud about it, we're going to continue being valued community members.
Right.
And, anyone who wants to join us in this effort can come.
Yeah.
We're honoring those that fought with their lives, those have passed because of, certain, fights, arguments, violence, or suicide, honoring them as well during this time. So I think the purpose is just to, take that space up, which I think is so beautiful.
Yeah, I can see the passion in your face, so that's just amazing that you are such a strong voice and such a strong supporter, which Daya is as well, but you as a person, you're so passionate about it. So that's amazing to have that,
I think it's about, as I mentioned, I'm a straight woman. I might never know what my neighbor who's, in the queer community has faced. So what I will do every single day in my life is make life a little easier for some people, and to allow allow that love to seep into anyone and everyone in the community, because life is already tough enough.
Exactly.
Why are we making it harder by having hate in our hearts?
We just need to be there for each other and love. I completely agree. What are some misconceptions when it comes to the LGBTQ community?
This is a really tough question, because I think it hurts my heart to sometimes talk about the misconceptions that exist. There's back in the day, people were like, being gay is contagious, so let's stay away, maybe their sexual orientation will rub off, or nowadays some people have problems with their nannies or babysitters being of a certain sexual orientation, because they think that they're talking to their kids about it and forcing them to convert. Also, unfortunately, because of lack of resources back in the day, HIV was a very big epidemic in the gay community, right? And so one of the misconceptions was that every gay man had HIV, and people would shun them and not provide medical care because of the lack of education, and very alienating behaviors of the community themselves. I think the biggest misconception is that the queer community isn't just like us, that they're different from us, that they function differently mentally, which I think every individual functions very different mentally. It's not just us. Any community does. I know us, we always talk about the experiences that we had as South Asian women. And so how is that any different from the experiences that the LGBTQ community is having, And so oftentimes there are a lot of misconceptions, whether it's culturally too. I know in India it's not as accepted, right? Being of any other identity than straight. And so there are a lot of rumors that get spread throughout family members, throughout the community, governments, media, just they're really showing propaganda that makes the general public believe in these misconceptions. And so I always like to also talk about this. There's this thing, it's called the cycle of oppression. Oppression. So most of the time minority communities are oppressed in some way or another. And so it begins as a myth, right? So I whisper in your ear, I tell you a myth. You tell all your family friends. And then your family friends are actually in politics. So that myth becomes socialized. So then the political leader is talking about these myths, and then there's a whole community that's listening to them. So then the myth turns into socialization, where media is showing all these myths too. Then it becomes internalized, where the group that's being oppressed is saying, maybe I am those things. Maybe I am those things. And then that kind of continues. And then the last step is where society just treats them differently. And so that's how oppression began for women in general, is that there were myths that we're weaker, we're this, we're that, and it became so socialized that vast majority of the world believed that until we came in and we were like, no, we're not.
And people who fought for it, yes.
And so that's how, like, a lot of the misconceptions really do directly affect the minority community as well, too.
Yeah, so it's so important to be, like, articulate well, right? And not just, if you don't know, then, like, we've always learned to keep your mouth shut, but that doesn't happen, right? And then that really becomes such a big circle. Like, you don't realize what your words have power. So let's use it, I think, in a good way, you know.
And it could be as little as, once again, reposting a story on Instagram or Facebook, you know. If you don't know that it comes from a valid, trusted source, first of all, you shouldn't be reposting hateful things, but make sure that if you're reading and believing anything, that there is, like, that it's coming from a trusted source and not, like, an op-ed from somewhere, because
something up, which happens so much.
Especially I think a lot of times nowadays news outlets have become for more entertainment purposes than actually giving proper news.
I agree,
and so they're gonna pick certain topics that are cool to talk about, and so it's really important to know when to, like, step away from a lot of this, like, information that's being thrown towards you, to, like, reflect on it and be like, do I really believe what that news anchor just said?
Yes.
And to use your own brain sometimes, because you might be the catalyst to changing your future generations for not being hateful towards something.
Absolutely. In the same sense, what are some misconceptions when it comes to the South Asian LGBTQ? I see plus here, so do you say LGBTQ plus community?
Yeah, I think there's so many ways to refer to the queer community. There I was like, is there a dance
but okay, so what are the misconceptions about the
South Asian LGBTQ plus community is that, first of all, that they don't exist.
Yeah, I believe that.
South Asian people...
Because my parents say that it just, no, it's not there. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, and so people are, like, refuse to even believe that the queer community and, like, South Asian queer community exists. Then the second misconception is that it's just a phase. That they're seeing things on social media, they're talking to kids at school, they're talking to other, folks that are in the queer community, and so that's why they feel like they are this way as well. So this is when the horrifying, like, conversion therapy sort of begins and all of these things. I've heard that, a lot of South Asian Desi parents have sent their kids off to, like, religious camps over the summer where a pundit will be like, you're not actually gay, like, let's talk about horrifying things. So a lot of people still think it's a phase, and sometimes, as we talked about earlier, it's very fluid, so you might feel a certain way for a couple years and then maybe feel differently. But that is one of the largest misconceptions, is that South Asian LGBTQ people do not exist. But what I've learned working at Daya for the last couple of years is that such a large, loving community does exist in Houston, and these people are working towards debunking these myths and these misconceptions that the South Asian queer community, it doesn't. One of those things is it doesn't exist, and then the second thing is that there aren't a lot of. Articulating this right now is so it's such a passionate topic that I guess I'll come back to it if I can think of it. There's so many things going on in my brain. But also, one of the last things about misconceptions in the LGBTQ community, queer community, South Asian queer community, is that violence doesn't exist in that community as well. And so that's where sort of Daya comes in with our lens of really educating the public on the fact that domestic violence in queer communities exists at a higher rate almost than normal heterosexual couples.
So where does the violence come from? From the family or from the partner? Or?
So there's a lot of family violence. That's where it usually begins, is parents sort of saying certain things to their children, community members shunning them, not allowing them to come to their religious centers and stuff. And then that's when that kind of behavior gets internalized. And then when they get into an unhealthy relationship with another person, that violence is often accepted. And really terrible fact is that the LGBTQ community really doesn't come forward with telling people about their abuse for two reasons. They don't know what resources exist for them in the community, or they feel like it's not a right fit for them, especially for South Asian people going to maybe a center which isn't for South Asian people, they might not feel as comfortable. And then the second thing is that a lot of the South Asian and any queer person, they feel like if they come forward with their abuse and educate, or not educate, and tell everyone about it, that it might make the community feel terribly about that certain community, right? Like if I tell the world that, you know, my gay partner is abusing me, that might make the Houston society think more poorly of the queer community. And so, you know, just talking about misconceptions, that's one of the misconceptions that, you know, the queer community has about themselves and the people around them.
I'm glad they have someone like Daya to support them in the right way, right? And then clear out what thoughts and all the misconceptions that they have.
Absolutely.
So how can we become an ally?
I think it all begins with, I think we're all allies who are still listening to the show, you two who are here, because educating yourself is the first step to becoming an ally for anyone, whether, you know, we talk a lot about domestic violence in our other shows. Educating increases your own knowledge and helps you understand the internal, like, biases that you might have, right? We're all humans. We're born with, you know, certain tendencies, and growing up, what's told to us, we often believe it. So whether it's your parents, your family members, society, so we internalize all of that. And we might not think that we have any biases against people, but sometimes you might look at certain things and think a certain way, but then you educate yourself and you reflect on that, and you say, when did I learn that? And is that even a fact? And so helping yourself get rid of those implicit biases, first step to becoming an ally, right? Then sort of talking about it with your family, with your neighbors, with your community members, where, you know, I learned about the LGBTQ plus community today, and did you know that this is how Pride started? Opening up those conversations and really helping educate others after you educate yourself. And then the third is showing up. Once again, it's you know, you don't have to be of a certain identity or orientation to show up and show love to the community. You know, giving back to, you know, centers that sort of help the LGBTQ plus community, providing them with resources. There are a lot of free clinics that provide free STD testing for the LGBTQ plus community. They're always in need of funds because they're doing this for free. So educating yourself, educating others, showing up, and like giving back, those are the best ways you can really be an ally.
Awesome. How can we build an atmosphere of inclusion regardless of our personal or religious views?
Very similar, right? All the things that I just mentioned, really just opening up space. Like, y'all have opened up this platform to us to talk about such an important topic, and we might all have different opinions on topics, but opening up the space really brings in inclusivity of different opinions and different educational points and different just life experiences. I hear from y'all about being parents and what y'all have been through, and then I, can share.
You share with us
maybe,
experiences. So we get to learn where our kids are going to be, right? And career paths. So
really just opening up the doors for conversations.
That is so important. How is Daya working towards supporting the LGBTQ community?
Great question. So we are really tailoring a lot of our education to the youth. So when I'm going into schools, I'm always mindful that there might be kids of very different identities in front of me. So making sure that our presentations and trainings and toolkits are applicable to all. So when I talk about sex with, any kids, I don't only talk about the sex that is usually talked about. I mention it in any capacity, whatever capacity that you would like to participate. Or relationships. We use very inclusive terminology. It's never like him or her. It's always like the person, because we never want to exclude any sort of identity. We are, hosting a lot of events where folks can come in and join in and talk about their South Asian, LGBTQ plus experience. We're partnering with organizations in Houston that, really work towards supporting the LGBTQ plus community. And one of the other things is we're educating the public thanks to y'all, and really being there to give more information, because one thing we love is that when people actually come to us with questions. Because I think a lot of people fear that we might think that they're in some ways homophobic or whatnot, but when you come to us with questions, and if we have the opportunity to answer those questions, that's already showing us that you community members care, and that we can do a lot more to educate and keep our community safe. And so that's what we're doing, and we're continuing to sort of expand our trainings to meet all identities, and hopefully with the help of y'all, we'll have more supporters who want to learn more as well.
Absolutely. How are you planning on celebrating Pride this year?
So I will I feel like every year something happens where I can't go to the Pride parade. So this year I will actually be in India, but what I do know is I will be supporting a lot of local small businesses that are LGBTQ plus owned. Studies have shown that if people do find out that business owners are of a certain orientation or identity, that folks will stop supporting them. In a similar way where we might not go to a shop where the owner is racist, right? Unfortunately, on the flip side, a lot of people have that thought process about the LGBTQ plus community. And so I'll be supporting a lot that way. Really spending time educating the public on the knowledge that I know, and continue to educate myself as well. Really show my queer friends a lot of love. I always try to be there all year long, but this month is just going to be a little more love. And I think that's my plan. What are y'all's plans?
And we just learned about that, so we're going to have to make plans for sure. And then any cool events to look out for? You were just saying the summer was a bit slow for y'all. So at Daya we are always wanting to do webinars and trainings, but we also understand that summer is such a busy time for everyone. Kids are home, parents don't want to join in on a webinar when they have to sort of take care of kids. In the community. I have never kids and get face painting done, show them all the cool events that are happening. I do know that in the morning is when the festival sort of happens, and then the parade begins.
but the streets become flooded with people, and it's beautiful. Just like the Astros parade, larger and way more colorful.
But so if they wanted information or if they want to get in touch with Daya, you want to share?
Yeah, and so if you wanted more information on the Pride Parade, you can, obviously, Googling is probably your best bet. It'll show you the routes, what you can take. You can actually park and take the metro trains over to the festival, so you don't have to worry about it. But one, thing that I would like to say is that we at Daya are always here for the community, and getting in touch with us is as simple as calling our confidential helpline number. So if you are experiencing any type of abuse, whether it's family violence, intimate partner violence, psychological abuse, we're always here, calling our helpline, visiting us at, www.dayahouston.org. You can even shoot us an email if you don't, feel comfortable calling. And you can learn more about us. Right now we have this really cool thing to launch our gala this year. We're sharing survivor stories on our website. So we've had 4 survivor stories gone out already. And they're so wonderful to read. It really shows the community how domestic violence has affected a person, but also how organizations like Daya, and there's tons of organizations in Houston that deal with domestic violence, that how we can help others who are going through abuse with the help of you community members, donating, giving back your, whether it's volunteer time, monetary, money, or platforms. And so you can learn more on there, but just wanted to, I guess I could end off by saying that, happy Pride Month, and that is an avid supporter of the LGBTQ plus community, and our doors are always open to anyone who comes knocking.
Awesome. Thank you so much. This was such an eye-opener conversation for me, and I'm sure for the community as well. So we really appreciate you taking the time and speaking in such an easy manner and easy to understand, right? So thank you. And thank you, Houston, for supporting Chai Time on 99.5 FM. We'll see you next Monday, same time, same place. Bye-bye.
Thank you.